8647. Who'd have thought that four little numbers have now turned into literally a federal case? This has to do with former FBI Director James Comey, who has now been indicted for a social media post where he spelled out in seashells on the beach 8647. So let's dive into that. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and I'm here with another triple threat with Kelly Hyman and Judge Ashley Willcott. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Legal AF for all things at the intersection of law and politics, and be sure to follow each of us on YouTube, Substack, and socials where we do deeper dives into these issues. So, Feds took another bite of the apple when it came to James Comey. I guess, the whole Aaliyah, if at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. Yeah, they took that seriously. And so in the vein of them feeling that James Comey is not their homie, they have now gone after him and said that he has threatened the president of the United States, as well as he transmitted a threat through interstate commerce. So again, basically, this was a social media post where he spelled out 8647. Now, as someone who has worked in the service industry, my understanding of 86 has always been either you're tossing out somebody because they're crunk and they're getting stupid, or a food item or an alcohol item, whatever, is out. Meaning like, okay, we have no more hamburgers, 86 hamburgers for today, right? I have never heard that in the context of homicide, right? 187, yes. 86, no. So he, of course, James Comey, is stating that, listen, that was not my intent. He was also under the impression that 86 was not a term of violence. And so the minute he started to get pushback, he immediately pulled the post down. And the Department of Justice under Pam Bondi actually didn't charge him. But now acting AG Todd Blanche felt differently and decided that he was going to now charge James Comey. So, how are we feeling about this? I'm going to start with you, Judge, and move on over to Kelly, because...
All right. So, 86... And Melba, you're always smart, and I learned so much from you. And I have to say, I too have never heard 86 being used with 86ing a person, murder a person. Putting that aside, the 47, we know Trump is the 47th president of the United States. But here's what stands out to me about James Comey. James Comey did not take the advice that any attorney would give, which was shut up. Stop talking. And here's what I mean by that. He said that he didn't associate this message and seashells that he took a picture of and posted with violence. But guess what? He did say he thought it was a political message. All right. Now, if you had said, I didn't know what it was, I thought it was kind of cool, that's one thing. But to try to slice and dice and say, oh, it wasn't a message to kill Trump or a call to violence. It was really just, I thought a political message doesn't ring true to me. I question how you can make that fine distinction, sir.
I have a thought on that, but go ahead, Kelly, and then I'll come back around.
There's so much to unpack from this, and it goes to your point, 86. First, what exactly does that mean? As they say, the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. For some people, it means one thing. For some people, it might mean something else. So ultimately, if this case does go to trial and someone's on the jury, what exactly does 86 mean? To me, it means to like kind of get rid of something, but in a sense of change, of something else. So it's going to ultimately, if it does in fact go to trial, be up to the jury to decide. But then we go about the idea, people hear this, what about the First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech. Aren't we allowed to say how we feel? Don't we live in a democracy, or some people say a republic? Aren't we allowed to say what's on our mind? Yes, but there are some limitations, as we've learned as cases go through the Supreme Court about certain things that you can't and can do. I always think of the case about a movie theater, right? The example you learn in law school is like, okay, you have free speech, but, and usually when you say but, you kind of negate part of what you initially said, but you can't go into a theater and scream fire when there's not actually a fire that's, potentially going to harm people as well. But I could definitely see the defense argument is like, first off, this is protected speech. Secondly, to your point, 86 is up to an interpretation that he didn't mean it in literal terms, just meant a change, right? You get out there and vote and have a change as well. I can also see Comey's offense is that this is prosecution against him. And so that he is unfairly being prosecuted because of the fact that it's going to cost him a lot of money and go through all this expense. And this is malicious prosecution, right? That it's being vindictive to him because of the message that he sent. Those are some of the things, but there's so much more to unpack in this case. Melba.
Ooh, well, I mean, as someone who, former American Civil Liberties Union of Florida attorney, I was deputy director there for 3 years, and a true lover of the First Amendment. Listen, this screams First Amendment. This is 1A all day, baby. 1A all day. Okay. This to me is protected speech, because when we talk about the aspect of, is this a threat? You got to look at the context, right? And was this a true threat? Was he there posed up with an AR-15 saying 8647, right? What was he calling to arms a group of people, being like, hey, on January 6th, let's go 8647, right? So you have to look at all those context clues to decide whether or not there is actually a true threat. And political speech is protected even if you say something really unpleasant. Even if you say, I wish 47 died tomorrow. That's still protected speech. That's not a true threat. And I will tie this to something that we're seeing nationally, but certainly in my home state of Florida. There was a situation where a voter had written to, I believe it was the CFO, the state CFO, and wrote a postcard basically saying, like, you have no morals because of a particular stance that this person took, this elected official took. And next thing you know, police was knocking at his door talking about, oh, you threatening the CFO. And he's like, he was like an 80-something-year-old man who regularly writes his lawmakers out of democratic concern for the issues that he's seeing, and that he's not seeing people take a stand for the things that he believes is right. And somehow that was interpreted as a threat. So I've been seeing this dangerous encroachment on First Amendment rights of things that are clearly free speech, but that the justice system is being used to weaponize, is weaponized against people so that they're afraid to speak out, that they're like, oh my gosh, if I say anything, the police might show up at my door. So let me not use my First Amendment right of freedom of speech. So that's what's so incredibly disturbing to me from that perspective. But also just kind of looking at the whole context in terms of what a jury is going to have to decide. And I'm quoting here, a reasonable recipient familiar with the circumstances would interpret the communication as a serious expression of an intent to do harm. Judge, do you think that the prosecution can overcome that?
I don't think they can. And I have to say this. First of all, I applaud you both for the First Amendment discussion, because that's what's crucial and key in this case. And I think the only reason that he's been charged is because of our president. Because, as you both know, President Trump spoke out and did accuse Comey of knowing exactly what that meant, quote unquote. Here's what Trump said. A child knows what that meant. Well, I didn't know that's what it meant, but I'll put that aside. So I don't think every child knows that. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination, and it says it loud and clear. I think it's because of President Trump that they've decided to go after Comey and say, yes, it rose to the level of a crime and met the standard that you just mentioned, Melba. And I think it's going to be hard to prove that it met that standard. It's subjective. The person who posted it, although I think he shouldn't have said anything, said, I thought it was a political message. I posted it, freedom of speech. How is the prosecution going to prove that piece?
And before I get to you, Kelly, I mean, the fact that he said that, yes, it did bother me as well. Like, no, silence is golden. But at the same token, that statement is a gift to his defense team, because he's clearly stating, I did not have the intent. I did not have the mens rea saying, hey, I want to kill this man. He's like, I thought I was making a protected First Amendment, political statement. And I in no way intended for this to be any harm to come to the president. And the minute someone drew to my attention that it could be interpreted that way, I immediately took action and pulled it down.
True.
True. Where are we going?
I still wish people would not talk. I wish they'd keep their mouth shut, because it could be misconstrued. But put that aside, I agree. The First Amendment, I think, it should win in this instance.
Kelly, weigh in.
I could see, to your point, Melba, on a motion to dismiss of attaching, he didn't have the intent. There was no intent there. But another thing I think is really important, I look forward to reading the transcripts from the indictment. So it's important to remember that, in fact, that he was indicted. And so what that means is there's a grand jury that was impaneled, and one side presents evidence, and based on what is presented, that the grand jury believe that Comey should be charged with a crime. Okay, what exactly happened at the grand jury? What exactly was said? And I could definitely see Comey's attorneys right away saying, we want a copy of the transcript. We want to see exactly what happened during that grand jury, what was presented, what was said, and get all that information, because that's really going to be key. What exactly did the grand jury hear when they ultimately made the determination that he should be charged with these serious crimes?
And again, that indictment, as we all know, you are innocent until proven guilty. And just because they were able to get an indictment doesn't mean they're going to be able to get a conviction. Two completely different standards. So yeah, buckle up. It's going to be a long, bumpy ride. Last words, ladies. Judge, then back to you, Kelly.
I always think of that statement, you can indict a ham sandwich. Well, it's not that easy, but it is easy, to your point. And as the political climate changes, which eventually we know it will, things like this kind of charge might just go away. We may not see what could be considered an abuse of discretion in prosecuting.
Yeah. Kelly.
If that happens, if the judge determines that it is an abuse or vindictive, malicious prosecution, I hope whoever the judge is, if they'd make that determination, that they give Comey attorney's fees, because having an attorney and defending these cases are very expensive, time consuming. So in interest of justice and to serve justice, if the judge ultimately makes that determination, they should consider that hopefully as well.
Oh, I love that, Kelly, because to me, because in my opinion, this Department of Justice has been very reckless in how they've been charging people, right? Because they thinking it's just fun. You get an indictment, you get an indictment. But the minute they got to pony up, the minute there is sanctions or contempt for continuing to file these cases that have no merit, and forcing people to mortgage houses or do whatever they have to do to be able to defend themselves, they might take a second look and do what prosecutors all around the country do. Look at the facts and think real deep before they leap. So there's that. So I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the resident legal diva, here with Kelly Hyman and Judge Ashley Willcott in our triple threat. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep demanding justice. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.